Now, the White House says it's pleased the Senate has come to an agreement on a long-term government spending bill. During the press briefing today, Sarah Sanders praised Senate leaders for coming together to avoid another budget crisis. When asked if the president would sign off on the Senate's version, Sanders said that he would need to see the final version, of course, before making the decision. But Sanders then blasted Nancy Pelosi for once again using Dreamers as a political pawn.
The budget deal should be a budget deal, and that members of Congress, like Nancy Pelosi, should not hold our military hostage over a separate issue. We've laid out what we would like to see in immigration legislation, and I think it's something that Nancy Pelosi should support, and hopefully she will come on board. We can get this budget deal done, and then we can focus on getting an immigration deal done.
Reporters pressed Sanders on if the deal needed to have funding for immigration reform after the president's comments Tuesday on shutting the government down if there was no money for the wall and border security. Sanders said that, of course, that the White House is focused on keeping the government open and our troops funded. So I want to bring in White House correspondent Trey Yingst, who joins me now. Trey, this deal would, as we mentioned, boost military and non-defense spending by $300 billion over the next 2 years. Now, it's got legs in the Senate. Many in the House are expected to reject this, but where does the White House land, or where are they expected to land?
Well, look, right now the White House is excited to see some bipartisanship on Capitol Hill, and this is exactly what the president was originally looking for, a 2-year funding deal. What we see from these lawmakers on the Hill in this compromise, it's going to increase budget caps over the next 2 years by nearly $300 billion. But senior administration officials are saying this is a win-win situation. The Democrats are getting a little bit, the Republicans are getting a little bit, and the president is getting more defense spending like he promised the American people. When you look at the numbers breakdown, we're looking at nearly $80 billion in defense boost increase here within this legislation that's been written by those senators on Capitol Hill. Additionally, we're looking at non-defense spending of $63 billion. So you see a little bit on the right, a little bit on the left, but when you break it down for the Democrats, they're also looking at a 10-year children's health insurance program extension. This is going to fund that program for the next 10 years if it does make it to the House and ultimately to the president's desk. And then additionally, that's $6 billion for the larger opioid fight. So the White House is still cautioning reporters, saying, look, the president wants to review this legislation, but he does see this as a positive sign that there has been some sort of movement on Capitol Hill. And I think moving forward, they're going to wait to see what House lawmakers have to say about this legislation if it does make it over to the House floor. And then ultimately, the White House is going to try to whip their own lawmakers there on the Hill and see how many votes they have, and ultimately see if they do have the number of votes moving forward to get this passed on to the president's desk. But again, this is what the president was looking for originally, a long-term spending bill, ultimately providing the American people with what they need both here in the United States and also abroad.
And Trey, I know we're having audio issues there, but Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader of 6 hours plus on her unofficial filibuster on DACA, have you been able to get any thoughts on this from the White House?
Well, I asked one senior administration official just a few minutes ago what they thought about this filibuster by Nancy Pelosi, and they simply laughed. I think the White House is really starting to understand that this is developing very quickly. We did see on Tuesday President Trump saying that he would love a government shutdown if Democrats weren't willing to find some sort of immigration solution. Nancy Pelosi saying on the House floor today that she is unwilling to support any sort of long-term funding bill if it does not include a vote down the line, which would ultimately lead to protection for those DACA recipients. The White House has said, look, we've released an immigration framework. We're looking to move forward on immigration, but they see progress on this spending bill, and they want to make sure that this gets done while there are lawmakers from both sides coming together. So right now, the White House not really taking that filibuster too seriously, and they do feel that they have the support from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle when it comes to this new piece of legislation.
All right, and Defense Secretary James Mattis, he was at the briefing today. He hasn't been at a briefing for months now. We haven't seen him there, but today he was there, and he says the situation on the Korean Peninsula is, quote, firmly in the diplomatic lane. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that's exactly right. A surprise guest before Press Secretary Sarah Sanders briefed the media today, the Secretary of Defense General James Mattis, visiting reporters here at the White House, taking questions on everything from that military parade that the president is looking to plan to the situation on the Korean Peninsula. All of these comments, though, coming at a very unique time, Patrick, as we do know that Vice President Mike Pence is traveling in the region. He'll be leading the U.S. Olympic delegation in Pyeongchang, South Korea. But just yesterday, he met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to discuss the situation situation on the Korean Peninsula, and also meeting with our allies in the region to get a better grasp of what U.S. missile defense capabilities are in the region. The vice president had some very strong words for the North Koreans, saying, look, that the Trump administration is keeping a close eye on the actions, not only physical actions such as missile tests, but also the words that are coming from the dictatorship there in Pyongyang and the dictatorship led by Kim Jong-un. A lot of the propaganda that they've been putting out before the Olympic Games set to take place in a few days here. But overall, what the big takeaway is here, having General Mattis visiting the White House here, like you said, his bottom line was he firmly believes that this is a diplomatic situation at this point, sort of easing the concerns of many here in the nation's capital that we could be getting closer to a military interaction with the North Koreans. Right. So we're certainly going to see whether or not Vice President Pence is going to meet with any sort of North Korean delegation during the games. And just today we are learning that Kim Jong-un's sister will be attending the games in South Korea. Right. Could be an opportunity for the White House to have some sort of talks behind the scenes.
Well, the vice president's plans seem to go way beyond just leading that U.S. delegation in the opening ceremonies for the Olympics. Trey Yingst at the White House, thank you as always.
We can use your help. Call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call today.